listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is February 19th, 2024, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, you are still sounding a little stuffed up, but how are you doing?
I am. I'm feeling quite a bit better, actually. Thank goodness. Stuff is draining out of my head after about a month.
Good.
But yeah, I'm here. It's been kind of a light WoW week for me, and it's certainly been a slow news week. But, you know, we're here. It's Monday, which now means that it's time to do TSC, which we've been keeping it consistent, so that's great.
Feels good.
Yeah. But, yeah, I'm doing good. You know, as we're speaking here, Love is in the Air just ended in North America.
Yep, 30 minutes past.
Maybe everywhere, I don't know. But, and I didn't get the stuff from the boss. I didn't get the Heartbreaker. I didn't really think I would get that. I didn't get the Drake armor either, which is a bummer. Because, you know, how much am I going to use the Drakes in general next expansion? I don't know. There's going to be new mounts to get and new themes of, and aesthetics that are cool. And, you know, I feel like this was the time to really have it. Not that I know that, even if I would wear it, right? But, like, just to have it in Dragonflight would have been cool. The Heartbreaker, obviously, it's called that for a reason.
Yes, it is.
So I didn't really care whether I got it or not. You know, I wasn't shooting for that, but I was doing the boss like a couple times a day, 3 times a day, I guess, for the whole time. And I mean, I got everything there was to get in the vendors, and I was missing a lot of stuff. And I mean, we talked about it last week. I thought the rework on the event was really good because it really respects your time, and you can get a lot of stuff off the vendors if you want it. You know, it's not real grindy. There's not a lot of stuff to even really do. It's a little bit of questing, and, you know, the daily loop is really short and sweet, and so I liked it. But it is a bummer to have these kind of chase pieces that don't show up. You know, actually, I think this is the first, like, 2-week-long event with a boss and his Drake armor on it where I didn't get the Drake armor by the end of the event. Yeah. I think every other one ended up dropping for me, but this one not so much. So
that's
that is kind of a bummer.
It's on theme with Love is in the Air. That's just on theme with that.
Yeah, apparently so. They just decided, like, dude, this is the one.
Yeah.
This is the holiday where, like, everybody's just going to walk away disappointed. So
we so rarely release anything in February. We want everyone to be committed to something else in February so that everyone has a goal during this month.
We're like, everybody's doing this and nobody's getting what they want out of the process. Like, I mean, I think it's cool to have stuff that's like a rare drop, right? Like almost like a prestige item. It's like you got really lucky to get this, right? Especially when it doesn't impact character power. Not like that other thing that doesn't drop that we'll talk about in a minute. You know, like, I think it's cool to have that stuff, and it's more about kind of the chase, right? And the story around getting it. But, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like with these, like, I can't really make a determination on the Drake armor. It's small sample size, my own personal thing. It's not like I was doing 30 tunes a day.
Yeah.
Granted, you have a much better chance with your first tune of the day, so that's the only thing you really need to do mathematically. But, you know, it didn't drop, and it felt like it just felt bad as a result. It's like, you know, I don't know, man. Maybe some kind of stacking streak protection if you do the boss every day over the course of the event or something. Or...
I still think mounts like that should be on Black Market Auction House, for one. And I think mounts like that should be something you can buy with a ridiculous amount of tokens. Like, whatever the top end cap is for tokens, it should be like 100 less or something than that to be able to purchase. So if the only thing you're going to get is you could save yourself the weekly farm of trying to get tokens getting tokens every single day and not buying anything else and only buying that mount, or you could just get the drop, right, and save yourself that. That's always been, to me, like, oh, well, have 2 ways to get something, I think is actually absolutely fine. I will say, though, like, and you touched on this, of like those moments in World of Warcraft where when you've accomplished something, you remember, like, where you were and how you felt in that moment in time going forward, right? Like, I remember exactly where I was and how it felt to get the Stranglethorn fishing tournament done and win that. Like, I remember exactly everything about that, right? Because it was such an accomplishment and there were so many people competing for it. And, like, I remember exactly what happened with that. And I think that there is a value to that. I feel like with things like the Heartbreaker,
Absolutely.
for a lot of people, it's just relief. It's not even celebration. It's like, oh, thank God that's finally over. Like and I think that's unfortunate, right? Because you have to, like, as a developer, you have to sort of skate that line between, oh my God, I can't believe it, I actually accomplished this and this feels so good, and, well, I've been doing this for way too long and this took way too long and this is just frustrating, but at least the frustration's over. Like, skating the line between where that actually is drop-wise is a hard thing to do with something that's a random chance.
I mean, maybe an item doesn't need to have that prestige kind of tag forever, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe it doesn't need that for 19 years, you know, and eventually you can break it up a little bit and then put some new thing in that people are chasing that's cool. Like, I don't know. I'm okay with it being the way it is, and I understand why, like, the distribution is the way it is. If you could just grind it out, that would be cool, but it would be kind of a different thing. I think there should just be more of a tangible reward for participating, maybe, you know? Whether that's like an increased drop chance or something, I don't know, for, you know, the amount of consecutive days or whatever. But
Right.
Because otherwise, if you put the exact same item on the vendor and just make it grindable, then it changes the complexion of the whole reward and the whole structure and the event.
What if it was something that it cost 4 tokens and you could only earn 1 token a year?
Right, yeah, right. I mean, maybe it's just time for the Heartbreaker to be in the 270 token pool on the vendor, and then some new cool thing
I think
is
that
there.
would be
The
worth it.
Heartbreaker's
I
old,
agree.
man. Like, it's
I think
you
that'd
know,
be worth it.
the Drake armor's new, and so that has a bit of a different feel because you know that's the new thing. But what, like, how much are we, like, collectively as players going to be using our dragon riding drakes and our Drake armors and stuff in the dynamic flying future of War Within and Beyond, where we're using all these different mounts from our collections and they're introducing new mounts? I mean, at BlizzCon we saw the preview of what I assume is going to be the season 1 reward from Delves, and maybe there'll be different ones each season, but it's sort of like, it's like this mechanical thing with customizable parts and everything.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Like, if we get stuff like that every season, are you really going to be, you know, dipping back into your old dragon riding mounts? Like, maybe they are cool mounts, but, you know, it's always about the new hotness in this game. So I don't know.
Once dynamic flight comes in for druids, man, just no druid's going to use a mount. They'll just have flight form that has dynamic flight. Like, that's, you know,
what's the point? I mean,
I would be surprised if there are evokers who aren't just going, hey, I'm just going to use my fly mode, because you essentially can do that without having to use a mount. That's just, I assume, faster as far as getting in and out of the form. If it takes just as much time to mount up, then obviously you might as well mount up on something. But for a druid, the instantaneous switch into flight form and then do things from flight form, like, that's a whole different, you know, ball game as far as that goes. FYI, a good way to fix druids cheating by flying and picking up herbs and everything without leaving flight form, just put in dynamic flight so that you can't hover over top of stuff and be able to steal things easily. That's, you know, so move that up your list if you want to fix it.
Suddenly you just see like giant flocks of bird form druids just like zipping past the things they're trying to herb.
Exactly,
because
right?
they forget.
Yeah,
like, it's just,
like, that's,
you know, have 15 years of muscle memory gone in an instant. Yeah.
I'm sure they'll put in a glyph or something that takes off dynamic flight for those forms and things like that. I'm sure all of that will happen. That would just make a lot of sense to me. But when it comes to dynamic flight, yeah, I'm excited to see what they choose to do first with it. And I do think that it's going to really put the dragon riding dragons sort of away on the shelf for a while for a lot of people. Because, like, yeah, I'm going to get on my Darkmoon dirigible and dynamic fly around. That thing's going to be hilarious to, like, have a Zeppelin that I'm zipping around on. Like, there's so many fun mounts that I'm looking forward to dynamic flight on that, yeah, I think the dragons will go away for a bit for sure. All right, well, this past week, my World of Warcraft stuff was primarily Season of Discovery based, as you'd expect, because obviously that just came out and I was still leveling. Last week when we talked on Monday, I think I was 38 or 42 or something like that. Now I was 28 or 32 or something. Now I'm 40. So I've accomplished that. Yesterday was my last WoW day that I got to play and just sit down and play for a while. So knocked out 40 on my Druid, which felt great. I haven't done the new raid yet. The group that I'm with has run it twice because they had enough people that, like, went hard and were able to just play 4 or 5 days in a row. My work schedule keeps me from doing that very regularly, so it was nice to sort of get that all done. I am very much looking forward to hopping into the raid. I think the glyphs and stuff, the runes and stuff that I've collected for Resto are going to be super exciting to play with. There's still a few more I need to get now that I'm 40. and I can actually like kill the mobs that have them. That'll be a nice thing to do. But yeah, I mean, I know, Jason, you didn't dive into SOD at all based off notes this past week.
I haven't. I haven't. I mean, I logged in one time, did a couple stocks, got to 27. I can't explain it. I like SOD, and I think it's cool. I think really what it comes down to is since BlizzCon, I have played so much WoW that I'm just tired. And the stuff that there is to do isn't new or fresh enough to make it feel... It doesn't have its own gravity. And most of my WoW friends are completely checked out of everything. Like the people that I really like playing with. And only a few of those people are playing SOD at all. So that's like another sort of factor. I don't have that kind of peer pressure as much to like get in there, which is, sometimes that's a substitute for enthusiasm. I sort of have the opposite thing going on in retail, where it's like I would like to play more. We 2 weeks in a row we only raided one night. No mythic fights last week. I didn't do many keys. My preference would be to do more of that and to do some mythic bosses and do 8 keys and fill up the vault and all that. But I don't have the enthusiasm with the people that I'm playing with, and trying to manufacture it or like fighting against that tide is just going to make me feel bad, right?
Yeah.
Just going with the flow. It's like, okay, what do you guys want to do? You want to do heroic? Okay, we're done. All right, we'll do a key. Okay, see you next week. Like if that's where we're at, then that's where we're at. And trying to fight against it it's pointless. All it's going to do is make me feel bad and frustrated about stuff I can't control, right? And in SOD, it's just like I guess I'm kind of checked out of the whole ecosystem right now. Like I don't know. I kind of wanted a little bit more time in phase 1. And I don't really feel like going out and leveling and finding the runes and getting set back up. I was pretty decked by the end of phase 1, right? It felt good. And, in more traditional versions of WoW, we're used to like, okay, you're decked out, you checked everything off the list, you got a couple months, to kind of just revel in that, and you do whatever you want. If you're playing, then you have like a ton of power compared to what you're doing. And if you don't want to play, then okay. But this is maybe the problem for me with SOD is like that churn is cool because it's like these little bite-sized chunks of content. But if you're just not feeling it, then what do you do? And that's kind of where I am right now. Maybe this week I'll get in there and just start getting some levels in, doing some quests and just kind of taking it at my own pace. I want to, right? When I think about like what I like to be set up in phase 2 and like start, to level up and start gearing up and start doing Nomer, like, yeah. I'd like to, but compared to everything else I have going on and everything else I want to get into in my life, it just hasn't, kind of floated to the top at the moment. So I'm in a really weird spot the last couple of weeks.
No, it's, and I hear what you're saying, and it certainly touches and sort of leads into some of my, like, I don't know, weekly gripe or rant or point that I want to make about SOD phase 2, which I warned everyone in Discord I was going to have another, little like 5-minute or 6-minute discussion topic when it comes to this kind of stuff at the top of the show. So first of all, gear wise, if you're decked from the raid, you probably will not find any kind of upgrades for yourself until you're 40. The raid gear is so substantially better than anything that you find on your leveling process that you just don't replace stuff. And I'll clarify that my leveling experience from 25 to 40 all happened in the Outdoor World, and it all happened through questing. I didn't do a dungeon because I just didn't get a dungeon group going or together or anything. And I was well aware that the people who wanted to level up very quickly, and their only goal was to get 40 as fast as possible, was basically just to go and live inside Scarlet Monastery. If you went and did that, then you could just work from wing to wing to wing, depending on your level, and just run dungeons all day and get there in a couple of days, get leveled up. And I've essentially not gained any runes other than like the books and stuff that happen to drop in there, and not really seen the Outdoor World or done anything in the Outdoor World at all. Which, to me, I was like, well, it's Season of Discovery. I'd rather be out in the world discovering things. So I want to get out and do that. And I will say that not having gear upgrades as you level does contribute to the feeling of like, hey, this isn't very exciting because I'm just completing quests and then just vendoring whatever they give me or disenchanting it because I just don't have a use for it because it's just worse than what I'm wearing. And so you don't have that like, ooh, this is exciting, or ooh, I get to replace this, or like none of that's happening, which you're like, okay, so that is a damper on the leveling experience. The other thing that factors into this is how many zones you have to go through to do this. So in phase 1, I was basically in like Darkshire, Ashenvale, and then like a little bit inside Darkshore. I did a lot of Darkshore. But like 3 to 4 zones. So Redridge, I think, was the other one that I sort of spent some time in. Like 4 zones was about what I spent inside phase 1. I think I've been in like 14 zones in phase 2 because I was in like Desolus, Wetlands, Theramore. Like I was everywhere. Stranglethorn Vale, back to Darkshire. Like I was all over the place. And it was weird because a lot of the quest chains send you all over the place. So there's a lot of quest chains where you're like, hey, like go to the Shimmering Flats, which by the way is still one of my favorite leveling areas, and do a quest there. Oh, actually this quest turn in is inside Booty Bay. So go back to Booty Bay. Oh, this quest turn in from that same chain is now over in Desolus. Go to Desolus. And you're like, oh my God, like it takes you like an hour to finish a quest in some cases. With the travel paths, you sort of build all these up and migrate from space to space to space, but at the same time, those areas also level-wise aren't laid out to be like, this is where you go from 37 to 40, or this is where you go from 28 to 32. They're laid out as like, there'll be some 28 quests here, and then there'll be some 35 quests here. And you're like, oh, okay, so like, I did the 28s, now I leave, go level somewhere else, and then they send me back there to do the higher level 35 ones. So I was all over the place, which felt very weird. And certainly was more convoluted as far as the leveling experience goes. Like when I started inside Darkshore, I lived in Darkshore for like the period of time that I was there. And I moved from there to Ashenvale, and I lived in Ashenvale, and I moved from there to Redridge, and I lived in Redridge. Like that was kind of the way you did it in phase 1. In phase 2, you're just scattershot, like all over both continents. Which does not also help that kind of feeling of, hey, this is fun and exciting, and I can sort of sit down and dig into what's happening story-wise in this one area, because the stories just stretch so far across the world for you to do that. Now, you'd think, hey, well, the nice thing about this is you're going to a lot of different zones, which means you must be able to find a lot of runes, because you're traveling all over the place, right? Yet no, I found 1 rune. In my entirety of doing that, I found 1 rune. And I was like, okay, well, this is lame. Like, why is it that there aren't better breadcrumbs put in place for me to be able to get out there and find these runes if I'm traveling all over? I did my entire 15 levels in just questing around zones. Like, how is that possible? Now, I know one of the runes, I actually have to kill this, like, level 40 boss tree to be able to get that rune. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't do that till I'm 40, so that's not super exciting to be able to figure that out. I haven't looked up any of the other ones yet, but I will. And I did mention inside of on the show last week, and then a link to it actually got posted inside our Discord, to Preach Gaming's community put together like clues to all of the different runes, and so you can sort of solve the mysteries to try and find where your runes are, as opposed to going out and doing that. I might do that for some of the runes. There are going to be certain ones I just literally go, I need this for raid, I have to go do this. But maybe I'll try and discover some of the other ones through that. But in general, like, what made phase 1 really exciting and really fun was stumbling across runes, and those runes dramatically improving your experience at leveling and what that felt like. And so the fact that we basically didn't come across that in that experience, it just was basically leveling in Classic, which is slow and kind of monotonous. And in this case, really monotonous because you have to travel around a lot inside this level range. So that wasn't great as well. So there's just like, there are a whole bunch of contributing factors that came together. I will say I did stumble across the sleeping bag on my own. The only reason why I stumbled across it on my own was because Questy, the add-on that I use, was like, hey, there's a level 40 quest over here. You should go and do this level 40 quest since you're level 38 and a half is where I was. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go and pick this up. And turns out that was the little breadcrumb that did the sleeping bag quest. And I was like, great. So by the time I got the sleeping bag, I was 39. And so you essentially are like, okay, so I get 3% increased experience gain for 1 level. Maybe they should put this at a spot that's a little bit more, you know, hey, this is where you can find this because this is supposed to help you with leveling experience. And for people who are like, well, 3% experience gain is not a lot, the other things you get along the way are dramatic increases to your leveling, which now I just have banked, I guess, for when I go 40 to 60 or 40 to 50 or whatever it is that we're doing our next jump in. Because you get these like basically trail mix. And the trail mix that you get from doing this quest chain grants you a third of a level of rested, and you get like 10 of them. So you just eat one, cool. And it gives you like a third of a bar of rested experience. So if you want to level up quickly, you do that early, and then you essentially can just gain like multiple levels worth of rested experience by eating these things, while getting the 3% increased experience gain as well, and level up a lot quicker. So that's a cool reward. Like, I think it's really neat. It's just unfortunate that like I never would have found it if I wasn't using an add-on called Questy, and the Questy didn't tell me it was a sleeping bag one. It was just like, hey, here's a level 40 quest, and I'm like, I need any quest I can get to try and finish leveling, because I'm just going all over the map trying to find anything I could do to actually finish this up, right? So it was a weird experience to come across it that way, but I think in general it just speaks to this phase 2 suffering from a lot of problems, and well, the biggest as far as leveling experience goes. And I think not finding runes easily, I think how spread out everything is and having to travel all over the place, very convoluted on the map with it not being a very directed path, is another problem. And then, yeah, just not having breadcrumbs to a lot of this stuff is a big problem. And then obviously not having the gear upgrades, right? And not having that wow factor of, hey, I got something that's really exciting gear-wise. It just meant that it was a grind, and I think that's unfortunate. Like, I definitely enjoyed a lot of my leveling experience, but by the end of it, I was like, I will sit here and kill pirates outside Booty Bay to just finish leveling. Like, please, I just need to finish leveling. Like, that's where I was sort of getting to by the time I was towards the end of 39. So I do feel like they could improve a lot in phase 3, and I hope they do, because I think there's a lot of things here that they could take from and go, yeah, okay, we need a more, I guess, an easier way to get fun runes, because that's what it should be, an easier way to get fun runes that make the leveling experience spicier and more fun. It was really sad to me to be like, this rune would make my leveling experience a lot more fun, but I can't get it till I'm 40. That was a really sad thing to figure out. Like, it just was.
Yeah, it's like you get a phase 3 reward, basically, so now you can sit on that for a couple months and then benefit from it later. That's, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny, because in some ways it's like phase 2 of Season Discovery kind of immediately suffers from the problems that like an expansion on top of WoW has, right? It's like, okay, well, I was just playing endgame, and now I have to like re-level, which I don't really want to do, but leveling feels kind of flat because I have all this power from endgame, and yeah, now I'm right back into the same kind of loop. So
yeah, and I get kind of, I just want to say, I get kind of excited when I'm leveling inside of the live game to replace important pieces with stuff from questing, because I know it's going to happen around that like last 2 or 3 levels towards max level. You're going to start finding things that replace the gear that you have. I didn't in classic. That's a problem, is what I'm saying. Like, you need to actually have something where like I am now level 40 wearing the same gear I was wearing at level 25. There's a problem in your game design, period.
Well, part of it is like it's true to a degree, but the thing is, like, except for the SOD stuff, right? Like the BFD raid and the gear they put in it, like, it's vanilla WoW, and vanilla WoW's itemization and reward structure was really weird and it's not at all what we have kind of come to expect. So you have these items that are like extremely powerful and tailored for very specific uses, which is like not the way vanilla WoW loot was. And it's like, yeah, they're just going to be better, and I kind of figured that would happen, because itemization in vanilla was all about flavor, right? It was like, what is this item? Like, it has all these different properties on it, and like, how do they benefit me? And okay, well, some of them benefit me in not so subtle ways, and some things benefit me in subtle ways, and what's the best combination of it, or whatever. And they stripped a lot of that away over the years, and now I think itemization is too streamlined, if anything. But you have a much more modern sensibility on that raid loot, and it has way more power than the quest rewards or the green drops or whatever that you get outdoors. So I'm not really surprised to hear it. It's just like, I think, and from reading some stuff that like Josh Greenfield and Tim Jones have been saying on Twitter and stuff, and it's just like, this is vanilla. Like, they see it very clearly as a version of vanilla WoW, and there's certain things that they don't want to go in and change, and like the SOD ethos is like a layer on top of vanilla WoW. So I think you do have that kind of friction in some places where it's like the new stuff is way better than the vanilla WoW stuff, and so then there's going to be chunks of the leveling experience and everything that are just really flat in terms of, you know, power gain or whatever.
Yeah, I understand that. I certainly do. All right, now there's going to be more SOD stuff later in the show because we're going to talk about some hotfixes that are going on. Not too in depth, but with that, let's jump into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft, and we'll jump into the live game stuff. All right, Mists of Pandaria time walking is going on right now, which means Gate of the Setting Sun, Temple of the Jade Serpent, Stormstone Brewery, Shadowpan Monastery, Mogushan Palace, and Scholomance are all available for you to run in time walking versions. There's also the Sign of the Mists buff up, which increases reputation gains from combat and quests in Mists of Pandaria by 50%. And those dungeons that you're running drop 428 loot, and the vendor is selling 415 loot, and you get yourself a cache of normal Emir Drasil loot if you pick up the quest in town and complete 5 of these time walking dungeons, which is 454 plus. It's on that advanced level and track, so keep that in mind. This is a great way to gear up a tune quickly. It's also a great way to level up a tune quickly. So be sure that you're taking advantage of Mists of Pandaria time walking while you can.
This is really good. I mean, like, these dungeons are designed to be so fast, right? Like, this is not going to take you very much time. You'll probably spend, like, if you're queuing as like solo DPS, you might spend as much time in queue as you are doing one of the dungeons, which maybe is not a ringing endorsement of the event. I don't know, but like, these are fast runs. They're relatively simple. They're very flavorful. Like, there's such cool looking dungeons and cool creatures and stuff, like the Shah and everything, you know, stuff that we haven't seen since then. And that's been a good, 12 years now, something like that. So it's always kind of cool to revisit. And I mean, yeah, great for leveling up, great to get, you know, going if you got a fresh tune that you want to get some season 3 gear, you know, just kind of kickstart that a little bit. Also, the Skola rework was really cool. I mean, Scholomance is such a cool place. It's such a cool space, you know, in World of Warcraft. So that's always fun. You know, the rep thing is not as exciting for Miss because it's not like we have Paragon bags or whatever. But hey, if you're like a rep completionist and you miss something, that's a good chance to go back and do that. And you could Dragon Ride in Pandaria now. So, you know, just change that up a little bit. But yeah, you know what? For a time walking event without a raid, I quite like these dungeons, and it is a really good way to level. Just when are we going to get time walking Throne of Thunder, man? Come on now. We've been waiting. We haven't gotten a new time walking raid in a while.
I mean, it'll be Throne or it'll be Siege. It'll be one or the other. We'll see which one.
Yeah, I mean, Siege would probably make more sense for posterity, I guess, just because it's like, you know, the end of the story and the Garrosh fight and all that. But it's also a very long raid. It was like 14 bosses.
Yep.
I think Throne of Thunder was just such a cool space. It had a really interesting variety of creatures and stuff you were fighting inside, and like the different environments you were in, and end boss Thunder King was like one of the best end bosses in my opinion ever. Not that the Garrosh fight wasn't cool, but it was actually kind of a letdown coming from like Thunder King was the best end boss of that expansion in my opinion. So it's weird. Like, I feel like we are behind schedule or something on time walking updates. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe they're holding stuff back. We know like time running, whatever that is coming in at some point this year. But like, we should have seen BFA time walking by now. Like, we've been waiting for a new time walking raid for I don't know, when did Firelands even come out? Like years ago now, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my only thing. Like, what's here is cool, and I love this content. I want Throne of Thunder in the mix too.
I hear you. I will really enjoy time walking BFA. For that expansion, to me, hangs on me, man. It just like, I had so much fun during that thing.
I mean, the content was really strong. I get what people didn't like about BFA.
So,
right?
I agree. Yeah.
And now for me, it landed a lot more square than it did for other people because I like that grindy gameplay and like you just take one character and you just grind it out. Like,
well, and you could earn the rewards, right? Like your tier sets with the Titan Dust or whatever it was. You could actually
the Residuum.
Yeah, like that. Yep. That was great, where you could just, hey, I want to get this reward. I just have to do content, and then I get the Residuum, and then I can get the reward I want. That's great. Like,
I liked it, and I mean, I think the dungeons were really strong, and I think you see that every time they come back. Like, we got a couple BFA dungeons in the Keystone pool right now, and they feel mostly really good. Like, the raids were mostly pretty good. I mean, BFA is sort of where they started getting into trouble with the end bosses are too hard problem, but it wasn't as bad as Shadowlands yet. So I mean, I don't know. I would not be sad to have like, you know, BFA time walking in with a smattering of those dungeons and like Dazar'alor time walking raid or something. Ny'alotha again is like too big, even though it was a really cool raid. But I mean, Dazar'alor, it's a really cool flavor and some cool fights. So
I don't think anyone's looking for time walking Gahoon. I think that raid's probably not going to be the one that they do.
I don't. I mean that wasn't a bad raid, but yeah, Gahoon gave me fits by the end of that. But I don't know. I don't know where our. I feel we're just due for time walking updates, man. We need more stuff for the Miss event. We need BFA in the rotation, hopefully soon.
Yeah, I hear you. Be sure you're doing your Aiding the Accord next week, as well as getting your PvP quests in there. The brawl for next week is Arathi Blizzard. That's Arathi Basin with snow effects and blizzard effects, which means like you can't see the blacksmith from when you're up in the lumber mill. So it's kind of like you cannot see people rotating to take things. They can cross the water because the water's all frozen. So there's faster travel paths across the map. It's more exciting. This is sort of like their first foray into brawls. I think it was a good first foray. I think this dynamic weather mechanic should be added more into the game. I would love to be traveling through Red Ridge and it starts snowing, or to be, you know, heading up into wetlands and suddenly like the wetlands are freezing and starting to like the water starting to freeze in different areas and stuff like that. I'd love to see that happen in the game, even if it's like patch to patch, where they're like, hey, during this little patch, they're going to change up the weather in a bit inside this area, or it's a different season. So, you know, all of Azeroth eventually having weather effects would be very cool if they started to do this across everywhere. So Arathi Blizzard's been around for long enough that I'm like starting to lean a little harder on the, hey, if we're going to be going back to Azeroth and everyone's going to be really Azeroth based, we're going to be in Azeroth, this would be a cool way to spice things up. I'm just saying, like, you could even do winters and summers in different areas at the same time, because that's how the world works. Right now, in the middle of winter here in Canada, it is summertime down in Santiago. You know, like it really is. That's how this works. When we're in our dead heat of August, it is winter there and it is cold. Like that is how that works as far as the world goes. So I would be fine with them, you know, leaning into something like that and having weather shifts around. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So hopefully, and especially with Azeroth thrown into turmoil as whatever's happening with it, maybe that creates crazy weather. I would even be fine with them making a little bit of a political statement about global warming, if that's what they wanted to do when it came to things like this. Go for it, man.
I mean, it would have been perfect to match up with the Primalists in Dragonflight.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I don't know if the tech is really applicable like that. I think probably the way the zones are built, they can't. I don't know if they could just do
I don't
that.
know, man.
Cool,
yeah.
though. I mean, the good thing is, like in Arathi Blizzard, it's very dynamic. You know, it affects the way that you play the game. It's not just a cosmetic, basically. So, and actually, I think that this came in first, and then this was the basis for the tech in the Kil'jaeden fight, where like you were blinded and you had to find Illidan to, you know, you could only see like so far in front of you or whatever. Or it was the other way around. You know, they developed the tech for one thing and then ended up using it in the other, which is kind of cool. Yeah. You know, it's not like an amazing brawl. It's not a brawl that makes you go, oh, I got to get in and do that this week. You know, it's just like an example of, hey, what if we did something different in a battleground that you know so well? And that was sort of, you know, the idea that PvP brawl sort of grew out of.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm looking forward to the world being even more alive, and I love whenever they add new zones, they're able to really play with that. And I feel like if we're going into a 3 expansion series that's focused on Azeroth itself, it would be cool to see some revamps happen to spaces. I think it'd be really fun to do. And that's a neat way to do it. Where you don't have to change the questing, you don't have to change stuff like that necessarily. You just literally change the environment that people are in. Might be fun.
Well, you know, what it makes me think of is, you know, throughout Dragonflight, we've seen all of these public events come in that change the landscape of, you know, a zone, right? There's suddenly new, you know, elements in the zone, new objects, new NPCs, new stuff going on, new VFX, new stuff to do. Like, maybe that kind of concept can be... Now, you know, granted, we've had issues with the amount of public events nesting on top of each other.
Yeah.
But what if we took that kind of the concept of that kind of dynamism, right, and something different happening in the zone, and maybe just apply it to the way the zone is versus like a specific activity to do in it. Like maybe that could be cool. So I don't know. I mean, you know, stuff gets repurposed all the time in WoW. They make something work for one purpose and then they use it for a different one. And I think Blizzard's an example of that. And I think, you know, there's always opportunities for that. So you know, I would love to see sort of the outdoor world be a bit more dynamic, but not really the impact on like what content is available, right? Like, exactly. This is the stuff that you're doing. I don't want to be like, hey, or not.
Hey, the water's frozen, so you just can't complete quests that were, you know, looting a chest underneath of a frozen ship or something, right? Like, I don't want that to happen for sure. But yes, I think it'd be neat to like have, you know, ice along the shoreline, and you know the Murlocs are essentially, you know, having to be a little bit more huddled near a fire or something because of that. Like, whatever it is, like that would be fine with me if that's what they were doing. So I just think it'd be neat to see that element added to the outdoor world, add the weather effect more to the outdoor world, other than like, hey, it rained for 5 minutes and now it's not raining, or it rained but it's raining for me and it's not raining for you, even though we're in the same group. Like that stuff happens a lot. So I'm looking forward to it. Anyways, World Boss, be sure you're out there killing Orstor the Hibernator. Get yourself your Bear Transmog if you're a Druid, or some 441 loot if you're just looking to get some more loots. We also have Fortified, Entangling, and Bolstering for our Mythic Plus affixes for the week, which means non-boss enemies have 20% more health. They deal increased damage. While in combat, Entangling Vines periodically snare players. And when any non-boss enemy dies, its Death Cry empowers nearby allies, increasing their damage by 20%, which stacks. Man, this is like, if last week was like the easier trash week where you just kind of smash through trash, this week is the like sloggier trash week. You are going to take longer to kill mobs because they have more health and deal increased damage. Their damage is then amped up even more because as they die, they bolster each other and then do increased damage even more, which means it's very easy to build a creature very quickly that just one-shots your tank or one-shots someone else in the group, or cast a big AoE spell and got bolstered just before it happened and just wipes your group. So you got to be really careful with bolstering Fortified for sure. Entangling's almost a non-affix. It's one of those like, hey, yes, you do need to move regularly to try and break these vines or use some sort of escape with Hand of Protection or shapeshifting or your gnomish escape, whatever it is. But you also aren't punished too severely for not moving. Being stunned does suck if you do in fact get stunned for that period of time. But it's not like, hey, you got killed because of this necessarily. Like unless you're in a mechanic you shouldn't be in, it's not really affecting you that much. And you won't be in those mechanics for very long because bosses are going to fall over very easily because it's not tyrannical. So bosses are going to melt, but your Fortified bolstering is your like danger zone. There's the chance that you get entangled inside a bad way, inside of a tight space when there's something happening or whatever it is. It's just, I feel like it's not nearly as impactful an affix that you're going to notice it as much this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair assessment. Overall, I think this is a pretty good Fort week still, though. You do have to be careful with bolstering. Obviously, the extra 20% damage can, you know, that could start creating some dangerous situations. Bolstering does stack, right? So if you have a 5 pull and you kill one mob at a time, then the 5th mob is going to have 4 stacks and it's going to be doing 80% increased damage. But each stack has an individual duration. Bolstering used to just be, if a thing is bolstered, it's bolstered. And the only way you're going to unbolster it is to kill it or reset combat. In other words, wipe or, you know, everybody run away and meld and feign death or whatever. It does expire now, like in combat, which is great. It doesn't grant a temporary health anymore, which is great. You know, you want to be cleaving stuff down and killing it evenly, or, you know, if there's a particularly dangerous mob, pick it out and kill it quick, and then, you know, everything gets a little bit of a buff and you keep going. But overall, like, I don't, new bolstering is way more player friendly than bolstering used to be, which is great. And yeah, you know, entangling is funny because it's one of those affixes that doesn't matter 99% of the time. It's only that one time, a week or whatever, that you notice it where it overlapped with something that was really important, or like it popped up when you had to stand still for something, right? And so you had to just eat the stun because it was less dangerous than moving. But yeah, I mean, to me, this looks like a really good Fort Week. This is a nice combo. There's no real counterplay for bolstering. I don't think you can remove that or like purge it in any way. But, anything that breaks snares with entangling is nice. It's a nice opportunity for paladins to be tossing out, Hand of Freedom with the thing that casts it on themselves on a target. Just negate it for 2/5 of your dungeon every time it goes out. So that, that always feels cool when you have those tools to bring into a dungeon. But, yeah, I mean, overall, I think this is going to be a great Fort Week coming up. So I'm looking forward to getting there and at least doing something. I mean, I think my big Season 3 dungeon push is over, post 3K and all that. But, I mean, I can't say enough about how fun the dungeons are this season. And I think the affixes feel really favorable and player-friendly. So, if, we still probably got, a couple months, 2.5, 3 months of the season left, but if you are still pushing for stuff, if you need fort rating, this is a great week. And if you're just coming up, if you're doing like 7s, 10s, whatever, like fort entangling, like that's a pretty good way to start getting comfortable. It's going to be friendly out there in lower keys for sure.
Yeah, it's certainly a good week when it comes to just doing the low end keys. And as long as you're familiar with not building a boss, basically, that's going to one-shot someone, then you're doing fine as far as this week goes. All right, Hatching of the Hippogriffs is the micro-holiday that's coming your way this Friday. It's going to be the 23rd. It's only on the 23rd. It takes place in Faralas. You head out there and you incubate an egg for a Frey Feather hatchling companion that's going to hang out on your shoulder for 24 hours. And if you actually defeat Lorthalium, you extend that duration to 5 days. So if you want your little hippogriff hatchling to chill out with you for a while, then you need to complete the event and need to kill off Lorthalium, and then you're able to get him to hang out with you. This is another great way to earn currency this month if you haven't capped out your Traveler's Log yet. But yeah, it's a fun one too.
I love this one. I got to remember to do this. Sometimes I just forget with these single day only things. Yeah. And Fridays are usually busy for me in general, but yeah, I got to get down there because I love this. I mean, who doesn't want to hang out with a baby hippogriff on your shoulder for a week, man? I do. So, yeah, I got to make sure to go do this for sure. It doesn't really take any kind of time investment or skill or anything. You kind of just go hang out down there. You'll find an egg. You can incubate it. Lorthalium spawns every 90 seconds or something, maybe every 3 minutes. It's not like it's a long respawn. You're not going to be hanging out down there for too long. And then there you go. You get a cool little bonus, little buddy to hang out with you for a while. So go check it out on Friday. Don't forget. Yeah. I think I forgot last year, and it was really sad when I logged in the next day or whatever, and I was like, oh, right, that's already over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad if you really wanted your buddy to hang out with you and you didn't get to do it. I'd be like me missing out on the Boomkin hatchling stuff, man. You got to have the little Moonkins.
I know. Or there was that one year where I went and got all my Moonkins, and then I queued into a PvP brawl or something, my God. And then I lost them all. Yeah, that was that hurt pretty bad. I'm not much of a PvPer. I didn't really need to do that brawl. I learned my lesson the hard way there.
Yeah, if you're gonna do your brawl this week, do it before Friday, and then get your Hippogriff hatchling. You don't want to lose them to PvP clearing your buffs. Oh, that's so sad, man. All right, hot fixes for the week. In Amir Dasil, Tindral Sageswift, they address an issue where players who flee is the term I'm going to use, out of the raid before the encounter ends can sometimes cause them to be stranded in the Great Sea. Talk about a punishment. Talk about literally, oh, you're trying to bubble Hearth out? You're trying to get out of here early? Yeah, you go for it, buddy. You're just going to end up in the Great Sea. You might as well
There have been some really weird problems with Tindral's arena, and I don't know. I mean, it's a weird arena, right? Because it's huge and it's outdoors and all that, and you drag and ride around in it. So I'm sure that creates all kinds of very strange tech hurdles in the background. And so apparently I didn't see this happen. I mean, I've had people who get stuck in Tindral's arena after they die or whatever, and we kill the boss and proceed into Farok's room, and then they have to just fly all the way through the entire Tindral arena all the way out to the portal on the other side, or get a summon. And if we have a warlock, if one of our warlocks decided to log on that night. So yeah, that I've seen that, but I haven't seen this where somebody ends up in the middle of the ocean.
Yep.
That's pretty funny.
All right, in Atal Dazar, they addressed an issue where mind-controlled Dazari confessors can dispel and remove an ally's challenger's might buff. Yeah, that's not a buff you want getting dispelled off you. That's probably bad. Just keep that in mind.
Well, I wonder, like, if they did that, would you then be able to like change your gear?
I don't know. It's a weird one.
Or like do stuff because Challenger's Might is the thing that like marks you as being in the Keystone Dungeon, right?
Yeah.
So like that's the thing that like prevents you from changing talents or changing gear. So if that was removing that, I wonder if you could then like swap trinkets around or whatever for the next pull. Like
it's a weird
that'd be pretty broken if that allowed you to do that. So yeah, you could imagine why they would want that fixed.
Yeah. Darkheart Thicket, the randomized spawn of enemies that happens before Archdruid Gladalis is now no longer randomized. So just keep that in mind too. You'll be more consistent in there. The addressed an issue with Rise of Murozond where Grommash Hellscream was meleeing players while leaping through the air before Bladestorm. I mean, how much more epic do you have to be than leaping through the air, cleaving people down, and then landing in a Bladestorm?
I feel like making it so that he's not meleeing players while he's leaping in the air before Bladestorm is lore breaking.
Doesn't it?
He should be meleeing everybody the whole time.
The whole time. Like, he should just be, I mean...
That's Grom Hellscream.
It's Grom, yeah.
But, this fight actually can put out kind of an eyebrow-raising amount of damage in a hurry.
Yeah.
This is like it's a simple but extremely dangerous fight, so this is actually a really good fix. We're sort of having fun with the character and the characterization and everything, but I'm glad they fixed this. I really don't want Grom like leaping over my healer's head and killing them with a melee,
just decapitating them as they pass over. Yeah,
no
exactly.
Thanks. Yeah, we could just stop. Yeah, we could. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think they already slowed down the Bladestorm too, as far as how quickly he could chase people. That was one of their earlier fixes.
They did, yeah. They increased the movement speed reduction during the channel, which makes a big difference. It was very noticeable.
Yeah. In Waycrest Manor, we got a bunch of fixes in here, including reduce the Pallid Gorger's melee damage by 66%. They also made it where there was an issue where Pallid Gorger could ignore players and just run away. That was great. So something recently like broke really bad with Pallid Gorgers, and I don't know why, but I'm glad that they fixed it. I mean, there was also they were also leaping through the air with Ravaging Leap and meleeing players during the leap. Oh,
and I mean, Waycrest, I would say, generally feels like one of the easier keys in this pool, or at least has for most of this season. And I noticed I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. The Pallid Gorgers are like the pig ghoul things, right? Like the pig head monsters that you fight they're like in that hallway between tree boss and pig boss.
Right.
And I was noticing like I would normally I'll kill tree boss and then I'll go into the hallway and grab a whole bunch of stuff in the hallway, pull it all out in the courtyard. What started happening the last couple weeks is I'd get everything outside, and the Pallid Gorgers would just start murdering my entire
people.
party.
Oh yeah, they just leap on people, kill them.
Yeah, like what? So this is why. It's because they were meleeing them during Ravaging Leap, and their melee was dealing 66% too much damage.
Yeah.
So I haven't done this since these fixes came in. I haven't been to Waycrest in a minute, so I suspect it feels a lot better because one of the great things about Waycrest and why I think it is one of the better dungeons in the pool is because you could set up these massive pools and it feels so much fun, just grab all this stuff and LOS it, get it all out in the courtyard and blow it all up until the Pallid Gorgers just kill everybody in your party.
Yeah.
Then it's not fun anymore. Yeah. So I don't know what broke these because they weren't always doing this and they started doing it recently. I'm glad that they fixed it because I thought I was losing it. You know what I mean? I was like, why is everybody dead? Like, why do you guys keep dying? You're like, well, it's a 23 or whatever. It's like, it didn't kill you last week. Like, I do it the same way every time, right? Yeah. Like, something is weird here. Like, the Pallid Gorgers should not be killing you. So I was really glad to see these fixes come in because I've lost timers to that in the last few weeks. So, I'm glad they tamped it down and that it proved that I wasn't losing.
You were crazy, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I knew something was wrong with those mobs.
Yeah. that's to me, it's the case of when one leaps over you and you watch someone's health chunk and they look at what chunk their health and you look at the ability and you're like, oh, a Pallid Gorger just hit me for 80% of my hit points as it flew over me. Like, wait a minute, this isn't right.
Yeah, something's wrong with that, right? Yeah. I obviously something in the overall like combat logic was busted, because this is the same thing as Grom meleeing during his leap. So I don't know. Well, I don't know. Who knows? I'm jumping to a really weird conclusion there, but it seems like maybe a related problem. That the symptom is the same, so maybe is a similar root cause.
Yeah, maybe Grom caused the whole problem in the first place. Who knows? He's just inspiring people.
He's a bit of a troublemaker historically. Yeah.
They also, with Heartspade's Triad, they fixed a problem associated with auras just not falling off. That's a good one too, because you're supposed to get rid of those and make the fight easier as you go. So if they're just sticking around and making people suck, that's very punishing.
The Aura of Dread, I think, that's the one that the second boss gets that just does the ramping ticking damage unless you're moving, right? So that's supposed to go away when that boss doesn't have the orb. That's not just supposed to happen for the entire rest of the fight until everything's dead.
Yeah, precisely. So at least they're resolving that, as well as some other issues that were in there. So as far as quests go, they fixed an issue that was preventing people from progressing the legendary quest line handling it. If you finally get the legendary and are like, yay, and then you can't complete the quest chain because it's bugged, I can't. I mean, Jason, I know you've been struggling to get this thing in the first place. The level of frustration must have been very high with this issue.
You finally get the thing. I mean, at this point, let's call it like it is. Let's be honest here. Most teams are probably done with whatever it was that they were going to do in this season. There's still some teams that are progging. DJs is still progging. They got Mythic Tendril this week, which was awesome. So they're getting there. And, there are still some teams that are sticking it out, but we're, 3 months into the season now? A lot of players are just not pushing on stuff anymore. And it's like, not everybody that I know that I play with has their axe.
Yep.
And we don't need it for anything anymore because we're not going to use it for any progress or anything like that to, progress through any new challenges. We're done with that. So it stinks that it worked out that way. And then so imagine now you get it and then the quest is bugged out and you can't even actually do the thing to make the axe. I would really like it if they would not do the Nazaro Firalath method of distributing a legendary in the future. Make it a thing that players have more control over and front load the grind.
Yeah.
Just tell me that I'm grinding it from week 1 and let me grind it versus get lucky. Well, you'll get a little bit more lucky every week. Did you get lucky yet? Oh, good. Now you can start the relatively minimal grind for a legendary compared to previous, old school front loaded grinds.
Yeah.
There's got to be a happier medium in there somewhere.
All right, so we got a bunch of season discovery stuff here. As far as hotfixes go, and then as class tuning also happened, and there's more class tuning coming. The few things I want to highlight here, Battle for Ashenvale weekly quest, Clear the Forest, and Repelling Invaders now grants full experience and reputation rewards through level 40. This is actually a neat one because I actually did the Battle for Ashenvale when I was 32 or something like that, and got a good amount of experience for it. This was a week ago. So if I wasn't even getting the full reputation reward at that point, and it actually now grants the full reputation reward, or if maybe once you're over 35, it becomes irrelevant and you stop getting reputation, you're now actually going to get that reputation experience reward from completing it, which is great. So I definitely think if you're going to put runes behind the Battle of Ashenvale, you should 100% make it worthwhile doing. So yeah, I'm glad that got tuned in. Makes me happy.
This is also on a 3-hour timer or something now, right? So it happens way less frequently. So I think it makes sense to have, more desirable rewards for participating in it. So that's a good change.
For sure, yeah. They also made Ashenvale's Rallying Cry world buff that you get usable through level 39. That was a nice surprise for me. I didn't actually expect to get the world buff when I did it at 32. That was a great buff to have while leveling. I will also say that if you don't just visit Ironforge every now and then to get the Gnomergon buff when people turn in the Gnomergon thing, you are missing out. It is another very nice buff to have while leveling. So just stop by Ironforge every evening at some point and get yourself your free Gnomergon buff to help you level up, because that's another little bonus that you can get there. The Spark of Inspiration world buff now correctly increases plus healing. That's good to see. The item reward for quests of the wind and power of the earth and power of the wave or of the water has been reduced. So if people were like really trying to make sure they got the item reward out of that, just keep in mind that those have all been reduced now. The Blood Moon. All right, so I didn't talk too much about the Blood Moon at the top of the show. The Blood Moon event is the PvP event that's basically the Ashen Vale for Phase 2. It takes place inside Stranglethorn Vale. There's really nice gear rewards from it that a lot of people are after. Basically, how it works is you go down to Stranglethorn Vale. You basically have any group of people. If you're part of a group, then it's your group against other groups. It doesn't matter. It's not Horde versus Alliance. It's just people fighting people and groups fighting groups down there. And if you kill mobs or if you kill players, you get rewards for doing so. You get coins. There's bronze, silver, and gold coins. 100 bronze coins becomes a silver. 100 silver coins becomes a gold. And obviously currency is better for doing PvP than it is for just killing random creatures. But you do earn currency that you then walk. Well, you earn a buff that you then walk close to these big Loa that are walking around, and they will give you currency as a like tribute for giving them the blood energy that you've been pooling up and earning, and you can then spend that currency to buy rewards. So that's how that event works. You can opt out of this event, which is something I learned the hard way. I was in Stranglethorn questing when the Blood Moon event kicked in, which there's very little warning for. And there's no thing that tells you how to turn it off. There are these emissaries that are around Stranglethorn Vale that have a big blood droplet over their heads. These are people you want to talk to if you're there leveling in that zone so that you can turn off or opt out of the battle that's going to take place. Because what happened with me and several others is we were just like questing, killing some mobs, having a good time, and just a group of 5 level 40s swept through and killed everyone who was leveling and turning in quests. Like we were basically at the Nezingwari camp in northern Stranglethorn, turning in quests, and this group just swept through and killed everyone who was turning in quests and then kept moving. And it was like, okay, this wasn't super fun or really, a good experience at all. What do I do about this?
Interactive, maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I basically asked around and was like, what do I do about this? Because this is basically stopping me from progressing my character. And they're like, oh, well, there's these guys with blood drops over their heads that are emissaries. Talk to them. You can turn off the thing. And I was like, oh, okay. So again, they need something in game that really like pushes players towards this. Maybe mark the emissaries on people's maps and have a little pop-up that says, get to an emissary to seek shelter from the Blood Moon or whatever it is. Like that would be fine. But there's nothing like that. So that was kind of surprising. Anyways, this event got itself some tuning inside this patch, this hot fixing that they're doing. So the Blood Moon now increases the health of participants by 30%. This also goes along with class tuning because they're trying to stop people from getting basically one shot. There were groups that were traveling around basically just one-shotting individual players by using all their abilities on them at the same time for the instant use abilities. One of these was Star Surge, which is why Star Surge got changed as a spell and is now worse overall as a spell. Because basically if you had 2 or 3 druids, you could just one-shot somebody with Star Surges. Yes, they now increase the health of all participants, and then they also made the resurrection from the Chained Spirits during the Blood Moon event now also grants players 100% of their mana, so that you're basically back in the fight a lot quicker. This is a bonus of leveling inside that zone, is if you get overwhelmed and killed, you can go to one of these Chained Spirits and just res instantly at the Chained Spirit with a bunch of buffs and not have, the negatives of choosing to res at a spirit normally. So that's nice. The Blood Moon adversaries, Zandalari emissaries, will now ward players in the far-off lands of Ratchet, Tirisfal Glades, and Duskwood. So they basically just made more emissaries. So if you're on the bridge in Ratchet that's going to take you down to Stranglethorn, there is an emissary just standing there now. So that you don't get on the boat, arrive in Stranglethorn on the boat during a Blood Moon, and have everyone on the boat kill each other. Which can also happen. So yeah, just, things like that you're trying to avoid. So
that does sound like fun in a way, like if you're trying to do that on purpose, it sounds awesome.
I mean, if you're the 140 on that boat, man, you're having a good time.
Right.
You're getting a lot of currency.
Like a whole boat full of 40,
yeah,
that should almost be a thing that you specifically wait for, right?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's just on a standard boat. Here you go. You want the Blood Moon boat? Wait here, please. And then everybody gets on that one. It's
a thing as long as people don't opt out, right? That's the thing. The issue is people who don't know what it is were getting on the boat from Ratchet to Booty Bay for the first time, being like, let's go to Booty Bay. I'm ready to start doing some Stranglethorn questing. And then just arriving in Booty Bay and being killed instantly by someone on the boat and being like, what just happened? Right?
Yeah. That's pretty great. That's like old school, like late 90s, early 2000s MMORPG kind of, emergent storytelling.
Yeah. They also correct an issue where players leaving a party sometimes lost their stacks of blood for the Blood Loa. That's a big problem. That's what you exchange for currency. So you definitely don't want that happening at all. So glad that they fixed that. And then, the scoreboards during Blood Moon events should now be more responsive in activating and deactivating when the event starts and ends, which, again, was part of the problem of not knowing when it's happening because you wouldn't even get a pop-up on your screen for something happening. It's an important factor to keep that in mind as well. All right. As far as classes go, as I said, they nerfed some stuff for druids, particularly Star Surge got itself some changes. They basically made it so like you cast the first one, it does reduce damage, and then your next one is going to get a boost to it, so it's going to do slightly more damage. It's really negligible between the casts, and it just in general was a nerf across the board. I felt it in particular because I was leveling as Resto, which is totally doable and viable to do as long as you run the Wrath glyph so you don't run out of mana really quickly, and you run Star Surge so that you can actually kill things quickly. Is it better to level with all Boomkin talents? Maybe. I can take on more mobs at the same time and dot them up and watch them all melt because I can heal myself. So it's kind of one of those back and forths. But I definitely felt this change. This was a dramatic change. So that was something to keep in mind. We also saw some changes to Hunter, Paladin, Priest, Shaman, Warlock as class changes. And there's more changes coming in this week. So just keep that in mind that if you're playing any of those classes, you're checking to see what they're playing around with and changing on you. Because that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. In Gnomeregan, we're not going to spoil a lot of the fights here, but they did do some changes where one of the bosses players can no longer outrange or use line of sight to prevent being hit by an ability. That's great. I'm glad they're getting in there and changing that up because obviously it's important to be able to do those things, but if that's an ability that's supposed to be hitting people, then hey, they should probably fix that. And then if they also went in and made the Mechanical Menagerie is another fight that's in there, which is sort of like the council fight. It now properly resets if one of the bosses was in self-repair mode when the fight resets, so that it wasn't actually like a boss wasn't resetting properly. So it's important to have a boss reset properly. And then Rig Wars Thermoplug Safe will now spawn under one of the bomb dispensers after defeating Mechangineer Thermoplug. So you can actually get loot and stuff, which is good. So yeah,
that's good. That's usually why I kill bosses. Yeah. That's why I want to defeat them in the first place, is the loot. So
yeah,
that's good. I'm glad they straightened that out. Exactly. That would have been a real bummer.
Yeah. And then they did some fixes to classes with PvP stuff as well, with the Stranglethorn event that's going on. So yeah, it's a lot of updates that happen in Season Discovery. The changes that are coming in this week are a little bit more targeted towards balancing some of this stuff. Basically, they increased the damage on Star Surge by another 14% because, again, they nerfed it too much. It was certainly something you felt. So they have buffed that back up again. That's coming in on the 20th. So this is tomorrow that we're seeing that buff. Conjure Water rank 5 will now conjure a full stack of 20 with each cast as opposed to 2 for mages. So mages rejoice. The tooltip's still going to indicate that only 2 are conjured, but you are conjuring 20 at a time, so you don't have to sit there and conjure like 10 times every time you want to make a stack of water for somebody and burn through the majority of your mana just trying to make water for a group. That is super punishing, so I'm glad that they are putting this in to fix it because no one wants to suffer with that for the next couple of months. So thank you. Everyone says thank you for that, especially healers, so keep that in mind. As far as Paladins go, the Beacon of Light mana cost has been greatly decreased. It was funny that a lot of people were complaining about how expensive Beacon of Light was. It is a very powerful heal. So the fact that they are decreasing it is great because it means Holy Paladins are going to be even better situation. But man, it was already a very strong thing. To make it cost less is just like, wow, okay, sure. Let's go with that. That's nice. Shamans, if you're someone doing enhancement, man, oh man, you got some buffs. The dual wield specialization rune now provides 50% bonus to your damage with your offhand swings. Lava Lash now gains 50% increased damage if Flame Tongue weapon is imbued on your offhand, and the proc chance of Maelstrom weapon is now roughly 50% higher when your main hand weapon or your two-handed weapon is imbued with Wind Fury weapon. So they got themselves some nice boosts there to enhancement. you're someone who's enjoying doing enhancements. So be happy about that as well. And then last but not least, the Paladin changes above that they sort of listed were all activated with Season Discovery Realms yesterday. So that was the February 14th. So keep in mind that a lot of those are live, but there are still some that are coming in tomorrow. So if you're someone who's like, hey, the Beacon of Light cost thing, that's tomorrow. Just keep that in mind. What's happening with it. They did make Art of War reduce the mana cost of Exorcism and Holy Shock by 80% when active. That I think already went live. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay, man, that was.
I mean, they've been, one thing you got to give them credit for, no matter what, is like they have their hands on the dial.
Yes, they do, man.
Season of Discovery, man. Like they're not sitting on stuff. They're not waiting any longer than I guess they really feel like they need to. Like we've seen a lot of changes. I mean, obviously all the changes we talked about, but I mean, they're tweaking stuff like on the fly for Stranglethorn PvP. You saw it play out all weekend long. There was like restarts Saturday morning or
there
something.
There were restarts like 4 or 5 days in a row. Yeah, they did a lot of them.
Yeah, if you follow Tom Ellis on Twitter, he's one of the server engineers. He had a couple really interesting threads this week about just over the weekend, trying to explain like, all right, I'm going to try to tweak some stuff in Stranglethorn Vale. Let me know how it feels after this change. And, this is how, he had this like really, really interesting history of how Cross-Realm Zones saved Warlords of Draenor because they reverse engineered them and like undid Cross-Realm Zones in order for garrisons to work and to like finally free up the bottlenecks that people were having. And then he talks about how that was the genesis of like layering technology in Legion, which then, sharding technology in Legion, and then shards, like a layer is a bunch of stitched together shards, and like sharding and layering of like different needs. And the thing with layering is it's not real dynamic. It's Orgrimmar and Stranglethorn Vale probably have different needs in terms of layering, but it's not coded to work that way. So it was a really interesting read. I mean, the classic team is incredibly dedicated to the way this experience feels, and they've been hard at work on it. So I mean, I think that's commendable. They're not always going to get it right, but they're out there doing stuff, man. They're working on it. We saw a lot of changes this week, and even at like, totally off typical work schedule stuff. It's not like they're sitting on everything for Tuesday reset, it's like Friday night stuff's going in.
I was surprised because I had a couple of work days this past week that didn't start till 10 or 11. So I'd go to log in to WoW and I'd get the servers resetting in 15 minutes thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's weird. It's Thursday or it's Friday or it's Saturday. Like it was very strange to see those messages popping up. So yeah, it was nice to know what they were fixing, what they were doing. I'm with you entirely that the layering technology has certainly been very supportive to the game. It is funny for me to see in guild chat with the guild that I'm in, people being like, can anyone pull me off of layer 3? Is anyone not in layer 3? I want to get off of this crappy layer that I'm on. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know. I'll invite you. But it's just sort of interesting to see people try and like layer hop to try and get into a better experience wherever they were. And a lot of times it's like, I'm trying to level a character. There's like 9 people just standing here camping spawns. This is very inefficient. Could someone invite me to a different layer to see if it's better is really what it comes down to. So that's what I see happening. But no, it's great technology. And it's always cool when we find out the little like hidden tips and tricks and secrets that happen with that sort of thing. All right, but with that, we're going to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a shout out to Alianas, Aragian, Celian, James, Kapawi, Max, Shorel, Skazgrin, and Rager. Thank you so much for everything that you give, as well as all of our patrons, including our newest patron, Ryan S. Welcome. Thank you. I'm hope you enjoy the show, and I hope you have hopped in to support the show. We really appreciate that. You can certainly head on over to Discord and join our Discord conversation over there, and welcome. It's great to have you. Our Patreon is found at patreon.com/thestartingzone. And you can join up there if you're someone else who wants to jump in and support the show that way. It really helps pay all of the bills that we have and expenses that we have. And when it comes to running the show and hosting the show and all that funds goes back into the show. So thank you so much. And thank you all patrons.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, patrons. Welcome aboard, Ryan. Thank you for the support. And yeah, I mean, the support's been a lot to us over the years, and it helps us keep the show on track, helps us keep the archives online and everything like that. So thank you all for making it happen. I don't know if we would really still be able to be doing this without your support. So thank you all, patrons, past and present.
Yeah, I don't know if we would have made it through Shadowlands, man. I think there might have been a time without patrons during Shadowlands that it was like, all right, we're just changing up what we're doing here.
That was a really weird time to be covering the game on a weekly basis, for sure.
It was hard. All right, if you also want to support the show, another great way to do it is by going over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. They really help out our show. They boost us up those charts, help us find more listeners, and we love hearing and reading these reviews here live from our listeners. This one comes in from Bernie from Austria, saying, my weekly WoW fix. At the moment, I am traveling the real world with my bicycle and unfortunately can't play right now. I am a player that usually comes back to WoW every few months since beta, and I have never been able to be away for, I have never been away for half a year. Really? Wow, man, that is probably the longest break I've ever taken was about that time. Spencer and Jason bring me back to Azeroth and its adventures, even while I'm sitting on my bike in Laos. I enjoy every minute of the podcast, and I look forward to the next episode. Keep up the good work. Best, Bernie. P.S. Since you mentioned you enjoy review/downloads from all over the world, how many downloads do you get from Laos? Cambodia will be my next destination in 2 weeks. Man, I can look that up and let you know. Thank you so much for the review. It means a lot to us. And man, oh man, I love international reviews. It is really neat to hear that people value the show. I especially, shout out to our listeners who listen to the show even when they aren't playing the game, just because they want to stay up to date on things. That is a definite appreciation from us. I'm glad that we make the content that you want to listen to when it comes to that sort of thing. So thank you for this review. It means a lot. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to write in and let us know. This is an awesome kind of anecdote for you to share with us. I hope you enjoy your travels, and I hope you travel safe. It sounds like a really cool experience, and I'm a little bit jealous. And yeah, I mean, that's another cool thing, that we talk about. I don't know, the show being like a bit of a privilege and a bit of a responsibility, and I think it's awesome to be able to provide that connection for what's happening in the game and sort of what the vibe around the game is at any point in time, even if somebody is in a spot where they can't play for whatever that reason may be. You know what I mean? So that's really cool to hear, and I'm glad we could kind of bridge that gap for you, and safe travels out there.
All right, here's your stats. The Lao People's Democratic Republic has 5 downloads, as what we get regularly from Laos. So you are not alone. There are other TSC listeners out there with you, just so you're aware of that. So. And we get about 200 downloads from Austria regularly. So, when you are back home, you got some friends out there doing some TSE stuff too. I'd be happy if those numbers went up. But again, it's our main crowd is US, Australia, Europe, and Canada in that order. So it's pretty
English speakers usually being able to at least understand spoken English is pretty important if you want to enjoy the show. So
yeah,
that's kind of how that goes.
Yeah. All right. With that, that's going to wrap up episode 619 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone, or you can join our Discord at thestartingzone.com/Discord. Take you over to our website where there's just a button you click to join our Discord server. If you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, some shirts, mugs, stickers, that sort of fun stuff, you can go over to TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/The Starting Zone. Get all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of fun stuff over there. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. You can also find me over on Blue Sky. I don't really post anything over there yet, but I do have an account. You can find me at just J Lucas over there. You might be able to find me streaming on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and or youtube.com/Shieldwald, but I haven't streamed in a while, and I don't know if I'll be streaming this week either, but we're going to get back into it at some point, so keep an eye on the video channels. Usually I like to stream raid nights and dungeon nights and stuff. But I haven't been doing that lately. I don't think I'll be doing it this week either. But keep an eye out. We'll be back on there at some point.
Yeah. No. Trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. And you can also find me on youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And I'm also over on that Blue Sky thing. It'd be Spencer HD over on there. So feel free to hop on there and try and find me. And yeah, otherwise with that, for Jason and myself, I want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.